We spent the last 3 months building and outfitting this expedition truck for full-time travel, and the time has finally come for us to take the plunge. Join HD.Adventuring for our first month living in our expedition truck, where we'll enjoy good views, better trails, and great friends. She's Heather, and I'm Dana, and over the past decade we've been drawn to spending as much time as possible outdoors together. But just this year, we decided to fulfill a dream we've talked about for years, living and traveling out of a vehicle full-time. We built this custom expedition truck to live out of, and now we're hitting the road in search of dirt trails, amazing sunsets, and most importantly, the chance to enjoy life in the slow lane. Our first month was a whirlwind, and we saw many friends, explored some new places, and learned a ton about this lifestyle. We started our journey just outside of Durango, Colorado, which is the town we spent the last 18 months in. As luck would have it, our apartment lease came to a close just as we had gotten the truck ready enough to live in. We filled the truck with way too much stuff, packed as many of our favorite belongings that didn't fit into the truck into a small storage unit, and then sold off the rest. Heather gave 2 weeks' notice to her job at the local hospital that same week. We stayed local for 2 weeks for Heather to finish the job and to give us time to iron out kinks in the rig and for us to enjoy a few days in the high country. This also gave us a shot to try the truck off-road for the first time. Learning to drive such a big vehicle off-road is a challenge, and we've already given the truck a few blemishes to show its true character. When I took this off-camber puddle a bit too quickly, you can hear a cabinet open in the truck and spill its contents into the camper. Our biggest rule to remember so far is that we're driving our house. While we learned we need to be the most careful with off-camber sections and left-to-right sway, overall we were thrilled with how our truck performs off-road. Slow and steady is the name of the game. So we found this cool little camp spot. We've got our truck behind us. We are eating some cheese and salsa and chips and drinking some High Point cider. Meanwhile, Bruce is off living his best life exploring by this beautiful river and this beautiful mountain. So most years I've gotten out fishing a bunch in Colorado by this time of year in late August. I haven't gone fishing once this year because we've been building the truck. We are camped over there by this amazing river, and I actually see some fish rising for flies. We just had some rain, so I think there's a hatch going on, and there's a couple fish in there right near those branches that keep coming up and getting flies. So I think I'm going to go fly fishing for the first time this year. First fish of the year. Our eventual destination was the East Coast. We had a wedding to attend in October in Massachusetts, and had planned to spend a few months after that visiting family in New England. But we wanted to see as many people and places on this first trip as we could. After a weekend in the high country outside Silverton, we spent a few more days staying with some friends in town in Durango. I worked remotely from the truck and tackled small projects in my free time, while Heather counted down the days until she was done with work. We still owned another car, and we sold that on our last day in town. On Heather's last shift, I picked her up from the hospital and we headed out. Our first big stop on this journey was to Fort Collins to stay with my sister Claire and her partner Rod. Rod had reached out to us a few weeks earlier and shared a little secret with us. he was going to propose while we were visiting. We were honored to get to be a part of the proposal and jumped at the chance to photograph their special moment together. Congrats, you two.
Close your eyes, get out of your skin. Only this matters, let it in.
We were riding on a high from Fort Collins, but we needed to get to our next destination, Park City, Utah. Due to complex schedules, we found ourselves zigzagging east and west, even though our final destination was New England. After saying goodbye to Claire and Rod, we slowly made our way to Utah. With fierce winds blowing us all over the place, we decided we'd break up the drive and camp along the way. After checking iOverlander for locations near the highway, we settled on the spot in Wyoming that promised the chance to see wild horses. We got in after dark and rambled down a dirt road for a few miles, and then quickly settled in for some sleep, not knowing what the landscape around us looked like. One of our favorite feelings when traveling is getting into a spot after dark and then waking up to a new, beautiful spot. It's like giving yourself a surprise gift, but waiting a day to open it. We fell asleep in an unknown spot, unsure of what we might find in the morning. But we were truly amazed by what we saw while sipping our morning coffee. As it turned out, we were camped along a magnificent ridge, overlooking miles of rolling sage and cactus. The sun warmed our skin as we got out to survey the landscape, and then we saw them. Wild horses, over a dozen of them. They were just one ridge over from us, soaking up the same sun and views that we were. A friend later informed us that there's technically no such thing as a wild horse in the US. These horses are likely descended from domestic horses, so are considered feral. But you better believe that if copyright laws allowed, we'd be blasting the stones right now. We packed up and drove the rest of the way to visit friends and family in Salt Lake City and Park City, Utah, where we enjoyed getting outside for the last few weeks of summer in the mountains, hiking, biking, and trail running. But soon our time in the West had come to an end, so we turned the truck around and pointed it east, but not before realizing that we had made a small mistake.
Yeah, I can taste it. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's noticeable. We filled up our water tank at a friend's house before we left yesterday, which was really nice of them to let us do that, but we made the mistake of not flushing the hose line first. So they had a hose that had been sitting outside for a while, and we just hooked it straight up to the truck. Probably should have put a few gallons through the line to clear it out first, so we just have kind of a off flavor in our water.
We drained out all the water that we had just filled, and boy, it takes a long time to drain 50 gallons of water. As it turns out, interstate rest stops sometimes have free fresh water available, which was lucky and convenient for us. We learned our lesson and put a bit of water through the hose before connecting it to the truck.
Oh. Saw that coming.
Running for a second to get into nastiness out like we didn't do the last time. We filled the truck with water and got on our way again. We had a wedding to attend in Massachusetts in just over 2 weeks, and I needed to work during the days, so we really didn't have a ton of time to drive the 2,000 miles that we needed to cover. So we drove the interstate. We are accustomed to finding easy spots to sleep in the West, but things got a bit more difficult once we headed east. The West is full of public land, and there's a huge culture of camping on it. But once the Rockies flattened into the rolling hills of the Great Plains, the land is mostly private farms, and there are far fewer places to safely and legally spend a night, or even harder, a few days. So we did something we haven't done in a while, and paid for some campsites. ATKY72. It had been a few years since we'd camped in a formal campground, so having neighbors within earshot on either side took some getting used to. And boy, our truck gets a lot of strange looks and questions when we roll in. While we adore getting far away from other humans most of the time, the amenities of the campground were nice and made for safe stops for me to work at. We pushed on, staying for a few days at each campground and then driving the interstate in between stops. Not exactly how we prefer to travel, but we arrived to my parents' home in Massachusetts ahead of schedule. Our first month of truck life brought us so much joy, and we are thrilled to spend the next few months living in the truck in New England. As we settle into this lifestyle, we hope to create more videos sharing our life on the road, so please subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks for tuning in.